This is chapter 8, section 5. It's titled The Undivided Will of the Sonship. Now, we're already at a point in our understanding of our study where the sonship is not limited to male humans. Sonship is a term used for all of creation. We could think of ourselves as part of the sonship and extending the sonship. We could equally call it the daughtership, or all of creation, or the universe. However we understand it, let's read and see what we're talking about here.
Maybe just the ship.
Maybe just the what?
The ship. We're just floating along in the ship.
We're sailing on this ship. What kind of ship? It's a relationship. With whom? With God. And where is God? Everywhere. Cool. Let's read. Okay. 5:1. Can you be separated from your identification and be at peace? Of course. A Course in Miracles sets up these preposterous questions. Of course you can. Okay, so we continue. Dissociation is not a solution, it is a delusion. The delusional believe that truth will assail them. They do not recognize it because they prefer the delusion. Judging truth as something they do not want, they perceive their illusions which block knowledge. So, interestingly, we're told here, perceiving illusions block knowledge. Help them. Help, who is them? Help them is anybody who is perceiving illusions in a world of distraction, not at peace, in conflict, not whole, needs healing, any of these. So every and all of these, all of what we see, perhaps. And truly, if we perceive them in this way, who are we talking about? Ourselves, right? So we're not even talking about them. Oh, that person is broken. No. We're talking about ourselves. But how do we fix ourselves when we have such a perception is by perfection. We fix perception by perfection. So rather than trying to fix outside circumstance, as soon as I solve that problem, I will be whole, that the world will be whole and I will be complete. No, I must perceive that as part of myself, and I will know myself as complete. And thus the world is complete. So help them. The people, the things in our world that we judge as bad or separate or lacking, by offering them your unified mind on their behalf, as I am offering you mine on behalf of yours. So just as Karen says that power with another is only as long as we perceive another, so long as we perceive another, we must help them by offering them our unified mind on their behalf. So, so there's plenty. I'll talk about this all day. I'm getting through this, but feel free to interrupt because I love this. A Course in Miracles brings in this fully powerful notion of course, we are told throughout that mind is unified, that we do not have private thoughts, that thoughts leave not their source. All of these are talking about the same thing, that we share mind, that mind is not exclusive to any person or anything, that it's everywhere and everything. So A Course in Miracles uses this rather than just saying it as an abstract fact, which we've all heard in some form, that we're all one. A Course in Miracles uses language to make it more accessible. So it'll say things like, do not allow them to belittle themselves in your mind. Don't allow that person to belittle themselves in your mind. Anytime we have a negative, a demeaning, limited thought about somebody or something, we could think of it as we're allowing ourselves to let that person belittle themselves. And thought about this way, why would we do that? Why would we do that? Somebody says something awful to us. The response is not to let them belittle themselves in their mind. You know, truth is true, and we all know it. We don't know it. We don't have to inspect it or analyze. We know truth when we experience it. So hearing something absurd from somebody, or the response is not to belittle it or label the thing that's said as insane, or even the person insane. Especially, of course, we're talking about different levels here. The response is to, I don't allow you to belittle yourself in my mind. I don't allow it. I perceive you as perfect, period, as God perceives us.
You know, I wouldn't mind adding a little something to this sentence. Help yourself and them by offering them your unified mind on their behalf. Because if we accept this tool as truly useful, then all these moments when we're looking out into the world and seeing things that we think are somehow off,
Go on.
if we accept this as true and we say to ourselves, we can help ourselves, we can help them by offering them our unified mind, then we're correcting our thinking right then on the spot. And then having the ensuing relief, because whatever we were thinking previous to that moment of perceiving them or offering them our unified mind, whatever came before that, it's been healed. Poof, it's gone.
Agreed. Help yourself also.
And of course, we're the same. But since the language here is help them, which sounds like they are not us, I would just like to remind myself that we are one and the same.
And this is where, thank you, Karen. This is where, you know, I've considered doing interweaving sections, because later on in the text, at some point, there's a section where it really drives this point home, where essentially every mention of they is followed by and therefore you. So later on in the text, it would speak about this as help them and therefore yourself. Help them and also yourself. Help them and thus yourself. Help yourself and thus them. So tying these all together. So when I help them and therefore myself, this is how we have to, this is the training, and it's training. It's training. It's a devoted study. And so this is to be accepted, digested while the mind is willing, while we're in this receptive state, because here we're receptive. There comes a point somewhere in the cosmos where something snaps us out of just the Zen, things going as expected, perhaps. This is when our training comes in handy, because no matter what shake we can go through, with the proper training, we know this is God. This is God. Maybe I'm unwilling to see the perfection in this now, but I know that I'm unwilling to see it, at least, because I know this is perfection. And even though this seems like it's not going well, I know this is God. I know this is perfection. So let go and let God. I don't know if anybody's ever joined in on a Power of Prayer call that we host at the last Wednesday of every month with Reverend Robert Brzezinski. And he says it perfectly. Every prayer, people write in, and we know this in A Course in Miracles. I'm going through this sickness. My boyfriend has this. And it's all different things that seem like different things. And he does a beautiful way of, speaking on the ill, on the sickness, on the financial thing. But ultimately, always comes back to the end where he just says, and I let it go, and I let God. And so it is. God's got this. God's got this. I just have to let it go, and God's got this. And this is what it is. It's not just when our body is sick. It's when we see anything as not perfect. That's it. There's either perfection or nothing or nothing, there's no in between. It's perfection or absolutely lack of perfection, whatever that may be. There's no in between. So if we're not seeing anything in this experience, my experience, your experience, his, her, it experience, all of the experiences, if we're seeing any of it is not perfect, then we have to let it go and let God.
And this is what unified mind is. Well, this is when we offer them our unified mind. This is the perfection that Tim is speaking about right here. And it doesn't mean that we don't then take action or that God doesn't take action through us, because of course that will happen. We might choose to sit in a cave for the rest of our lives. We can do that too. But most of us won't. Most of us are going to wake up and take action in a day and move toward this or that. But we can do that from the foundation of perfection and unified mind. And then I feel like Barbara's here right now, because then you can really feel the power of what action steps might result in toward a more peaceful, loving, happy world, which we all want.
And let's be honest, or really, look, there's so much to share here.
Yeah.
Of course, the classic song, "What the World Needs Now is Love." This is our refrain. We already know the world is love, right?
Yep.
We don't need to say it for it to be true, but we can have a saying, "What the world sees now is love, sweet love." It's the only thing, and there's just enough for us. Just enough. No more.
I've been playing that lately with my Alexa quite a bit when things get intense, and I put that song on and sing it.
I love your update, Tim.
Just because it's enough for us, don't mean it can't be magnified by us.
Well, that's a
Absolutely,
wonderful
Carol.
word I've learned in A Course in Miracles, extension,
Yeah.
right? It extends or magnifies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is, thank you, Taro. So now let's talk about this a bit. So when in typical understanding, when we say there's just enough, it's just enough. It's typically understood as there's a pie, there's just enough slices for everybody here. Now, in God, this pie makes another pie and another pie. And so just enough is always increasing. Just enough means that all that we ever could imagine and believe to be perfectly true and hope and our deepest heart's desire, the grandest vision of the greatest experience of ourself, this is what's just enough. And it's never limited. It's never confined. It's always expanding. And yet there's always just enough. Never any more, never any less. There can't be more because there can't be less. The concept of more and less doesn't apply to love. There's just enough, and it's always expanding.
Kind of like the universe.
Absolutely. We can just look at the universe and see what it's teaching us here. And Terrell, it's kind of like at one point we thought, of course, people always say that everyone thought the world was flat. We also thought that the universe was stationary, meaning that everything was fixed, until Thomas Hubble, or Edwin Hubble, sorry, I'm thinking about Thomas Hubble. Edwin Hubble and his telescope, this was before we had the Hubble telescope, he saw all the galaxies and he realized that pretty much all the galaxies that we see are moving away from us, which the only way that this could be possible is if the universe were expanding. And then at this point, the scientists, using logic, all the logic at our disposal, well, the universe is expanding, and so it can only be expanding to a certain limit because all this gravity is pulling it back, until we realize that it's expanding and accelerating in its expansion. This is what scientists talk about as refer to dark energy. And let's be clear about what dark energy is. This is a term for the thing that scientists have no explanation for. Nothing. There's none. There's no theory on how our universe is expanding and accelerating at it. Nothing. We have no idea how this is happening scientifically, even though it's calculated to be like 75% of our universe. So we can trust science. We can trust science, but we shouldn't limit ourselves to science when it's kind of still catching up to ancient thought here. Science, if we look at here, before we begin here, if we look at the brain, for instance, this is one way I think science, we look at the universe, just as Terrell said, and everything is expanding. This is showing us that we're expanding. Of course, it's simple. We don't have to think too long on this. And if we look at our brain, if we look at our brain cells, which is often, which is the embodiment of mind. The brain is not the mind. The mind works through the brain, perhaps. Okay, so we look at the brain cells, and the cells are these nuclei, it's a nucleus, and these arms reaching all outward. These things that are interconnected with each other, reaching out, extending. The same concept as the universe, it's expanding. Our brain, our mind, is this web of interconnectivity that's just extending. So our thoughts, we could think of our thoughts in this way. We have a thought, and of course, the Miracles tells us a thought leaves not its source. The mind that thought it doesn't leave it, it just extends outward. So these brain cells, we could think of the arms that reach off as our thoughts. Our thoughts are reaching out to everything, reaching out forever and touching whatever wants to connect and link up and exchange information. So I don't know if anybody has any other nifty little scientific or physical tools here. I'll just keep reading. Let's see, monitor chat here.
Maybe I could just say on photons that everything is made up of photons of light, and that's the light of the world that we are a part of, I guess.
Absolutely. And really now this is something that, well, I hope mystics know, but this is peculiar. I'll just bring this up here. I don't know how familiar we are with photons, but photons travel at the speed of light. So according to physics, time essentially stands still for a photon. Not only does it stand still, in many ways, it doesn't even make sense to talk about how a photon experiences time. It's at this, if you look at Einstein's equations for relativity, for special relativity, there comes a point where you approach the speed of light, you can't hit the speed of light, but photons are the speed of light. They're at the breaking point, this strange point, and they don't really experience time yet, as Judith just says, they become matter, which experiences time. Matter experiences time. It's in the realm of time. So what happens? What happens when you have an atom and a photon? The atom can absorb the photon and become what they call an excited atom. The electron moves a bit faster or a bit farther away from different orbital. But what happens? What happens when these two combine? We have this timeless thing, this formless, timeless. It's a wave. Of course, it's a photon too, but it's a wave, and then it combines with this particle and experiences time. How can we explain that? How can we explain that in scientific terms? Let's read to find out. So, I love the formless and the formed. The undivided will of the sonship, undivided, not power over another, power with another. The undivided will of the sonship is the perfect creator, being wholly in the likeness of God, whose will it is. And so the undivided will of the sonship. We're talking here, the sonship is one. So we may consider ourselves as part of the sonship, but the sonship itself is one. And thus, in the part, as we think of fractals, in the part is the whole. So how do we know the whole of the sonship? As knowing ourself wholly. So in this sense, the will of the sonship is no different from the will of the capital S self. We can each say my will. My own will. I'm not sure if you wanted to, is that Nancy? Anyway,
What?
so you can, I continue here, you cannot be exempt from it, from this will, the capital W will, if you are to understand what it is and what you are. By the belief that your will is separate from mine, you are exempting yourself from the will of God, which is yourself. You are the will of God. Yet to heal is still to make whole. Therefore, to heal is to unite with those who are like you, because perceiving this likeness is to recognize the Father, the Mother, the Creator God. If your perfection is in Him, in God, and only in God, only in this, how can you know it without recognizing Him? How can you know it without recognizing her, without recognizing God as this, not just this in a sense of secluded meditation where close eyes and just go within, open-eyed meditation where everything without is within, everything within is without. This is recognizing God here. And also, by the way, I know Karen said earlier, it's not like we're going into a cave, you know, to just sit in a cave. Isn't it interesting now that we can sit in a cave and still be in this room? We could be on Zoom in a cave. So a lot of power in a cave today. Even just limited to this this technology, which we can understand is insignificant in the grand scheme of things. If your perfection is in God, let's call it this. Let's replace. Of course, reading on our own, we'll be reading it as Him. So it's one way to read this, but I love text. I love sacred text. Now, for those unfamiliar, first of all, with the Bible, particularly the in the Hebrew Bible, which is called the Old Testament, there's a lot of references to the Lord. It's often phrased as the Lord thy God or the Lord God. Now, this is a translation, which, you know, is one of these kind of unfortunate translations because it doesn't capture the full breadth of what's going on. Every time we see most times we see the word Lord in the Bible, I think every time that we see it as small caps case, it's substituting for a word in Hebrew which is not pronounced. It's called the Tetragrammaton. It is 4 consonants which serve as the personal name for God. Now, traditionally in Judaism, Hebrews can see this name and write it, but they don't pronounce it. They pronounce it as Adonai, which is Hebrew for Lord. So English just sees this and replaces it with Lord. So we lose this subtle but crucial component of reading the Hebrew text, where every time you see this word, you're not reading it, you're reading a substitute for it. And this, I think, is a powerful process. So if we use this process here, every time I see Him, I'm going to replace it with this, because I think that this encapsulates what it's talking about much more fully than Him. Him is a male creature, but this is not bound to any form or formless. This is whatever we imagine it to be, nothing less. So we continue here. If your perception is in this and only in this, and notice how this captures this we could talk about this present, the present. We can think in the present, we could think about the past, we can talk about it. We could talk about possibility in the future, but it's always in the present, it's always this. So with this being said, that everything is this, if your perfection is in this and only in this, how can you know it without recognizing this? This, the moment we've been waiting eons for, this moment, we have transformed. We came into this as a single cell and grew to all that we are now. And even before that, we were a single cell, what it took to make that single cell. And we're here with each other, sharing this moment. So let's reread this. Go ahead, Terrell.
Yes, I'd like to say that this, to me, means space, time, matter, and energy. All together, rolled into one, makes creation and God. So it's never simple. And for a simple man, these concepts are hard to grasp. But knowing that he is everything makes it simpler.
Thank you, Terrell. I will, thank you. This is, we brought in earlier the goals of this group. And we talked about the single goal of making this text more accessible. Similarly, the single goal of this group, the single most important goal, we're talking inclusively here, the single most important goal of this group is to understand the simplicity of this text. Because it is, why would God not be simple? Why would God be elusive? God is right here. And God's saying, I've been here all along, right? Here, where? Everywhere, all of our thoughts, all of our experience. And so it can be difficult and complicated. And that's kind of, this is why I don't have a book copy of A Course in Miracles here, but it's a tome. And it's like, how from the outside, it's like, how is that simple? And you read some of the paragraphs and how is that simple? It's because we're coming from complexity. It's talking about simplicity in the language of complexity. And so we're naturally, we're here, we speak English in this time. And so the language is complex English. It's not just English. There's so many dialects, so many subsets of English. There's scientific English, there's religious English. All of it is complex, not all of it. But if we can use complex English to talk about the simplicity, I'd say this is an equivalent goal of A Course in Miracles. Because truly, I know that in the preface or in the introduction, it says, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And it says that this sums up the teachings. And starting out, it's like, yeah, right. I got to read all these words to understand that. I already knew that, but we didn't because we thought it was that. but go and once we understand any part of it, of course, because truth is fractal, any part of it is all of it. All of it is in every part of it. So understanding any sentence, any little sentence of this, we understand all of it. And so we know that this paragraph, what is it talking about? Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. And this is the peace of God. Honestly, I think we could just say, this is the peace of God. This is the teaching. We cut out the first two sentences. And this is the simplest. So anyway, thank you, Terrell. I have to remember to give some space.
Nancy, were you wanting to share?
Who?
Nancy.
Oh, this is the first time that I've only done an audio. And I'm kind of regretting it because every time Tim said this thing, I was wondering if he was doing, he was writing something like a symbol Tim, when you were talking about the sad kind of translation for Lord, how it came to be translated for God, and you know, and the Hebrew, and you know, the Hebrew language is not uttering the name of God, you know, Adonai. So did you write anything that I couldn't see because I'm on a phone? Did you write a symbol?
Did not, but I think, you know, I am just sharing a screen of the text that's in this chapter. So,
Okay.
you know, maybe it's helpful, but it's kind of just the text that we're reading. What I will say is, you know, I think it is a powerful practice to, especially, I love reading the Hebrew texts, and when reading, you know, English translations, it's fun to replace the Lord, because God is not limited to the Lord. You know, Jesus showed us that God is, if anything, just as much a servant as a Lord, you know, so we could call God the servant. And so if we're reading these texts, I think oftentimes what makes these texts inaccessible is these pronouns used, or these nouns that are used, like the Lord, as if God were some, you know, male royalty sitting on a throne.
Mm-hmm.
So we can get in the hat. It could be the same exact text, but we see the Lord just as the Jewish tradition is to see the Tetragrammaton and replace it by saying something verbally different. We can see the Lord and replace it with Yahai, whatever name we have for God, and still read it, and it would sound, you know, it could be a true reading for us.
And we could simply say this as a name for God.
Say this, yes, right. Honestly, I mean, we read the texts, and these biblical stories are beautiful, but it's like, of course it's telling a story. It's like, and so God said to Abraham, and Abraham said, here I am. But, you know, maybe it is. I know Kathy got an audible calling from God, but we shouldn't limit it to just that. You know, we have to admit that this is telling a story, and if we were to limit God to just an audible, you know, a commanding utterance from the heavens, then we may be missing all the signs that are in front of us. But Kathy, that would actually, I don't know if you want to share this, Kathy, that you did get Kathy, are you here?
I'm here. Actually, I got a few. I mean, again, I didn't see anything, but no, I got it through the clouds, loud and clear, but very simple. And I always joke and say, I wish I got more, because the first time was, you have everything you need. And another time I heard, you cannot do this anymore. And of course, that was the one I'm going, come on, give me more information. Where are we, what we're talking about? Because at that time, my life was in extreme turmoil. And then I got one other time, but yeah, it was loud and clear. And I also got blasted with light in a patient's room. So there's probably a few more, but yeah. No question, not a question on, you know, it was just like you see in the movies.
Yes. Beautiful.
And I've learned so much by studying A Course with all of you. So I just want to say, and God, right here in this pencil. Yes, a beautiful flash of light. That'd be cool. I haven't had that experience. That'd be super cool, right? But I am right now having the experience of God in this pencil, and it's pretty cool.
But you are me. We are one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I share it with you. We
Yeah.
share it together, and there's many more.
Yeah.
But it's that separation. It's I have stepped away from things because I felt as if someone thought it was making one special over the other, but that's not the case at all. And it's sad when one can push something, a gift or whatever, away because of the specialness. Specialness doesn't feel right. We're all here, for one another, and it's deeply shared. It's definitely shared.
Thank you for saying that. There's a phrase called unprovoked happiness. It's like we don't want to limit an experience of God in any way. We don't want to try to provoke it, to be some certain something, but it can be anything, and shared, as you say, Kathy, always shared.
But I do at the same time, because of what you said, is why many times one doesn't share it, because they don't want it to be as if one is a chosen one kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? That's what keeps one quiet from not wanting to share, whether it'll be misunderstood or what have you. It's a very fine line, but yeah.
Well, let's support each other in being bold and proclaiming God wherever we see God.
Truly. It's, A Course in Miracles would say that the chosen ones are the ones that choose, not the ones that are chosen, the ones that choose. So by definition, we all have the power. We all are the chosen ones, whether we choose it or not. And so it's flipping the power from something outside of ourselves to being chosen from afar, to being a chosen one. I have chosen this. And it's the Bible, the Gospels talk about, the first will be last and last will be first. I think this is referring to something like this, where the pencil is brought in its utmost glory to be equivalent with the blinding light that comes from the middle of the room, to see these equally miraculous, so that all of this is just equally God, that we can have these things and just, it's not to say that of course we're in wonder with the flash of light, but equally with the pencil. And it's not to diminish either one. It's not to rank one up anymore. It's just, this is the glory here. And we're talking on a computer here.
I think the important part is this sharing, then it does open eyes. It's, how once you hear about something, sometimes all of a sudden you become more aware of something just by having had that exposure. So I think that's the beauty of this sharing. I think that's the beauty for all of us. We're offering that continuously, as you were talking about expanding and connecting. And truly, the more we get to hear it, absorb more and more of it.
And yes, and so, and the more it becomes just part of experience, a couple days ago, I went to Barnes and Noble to find a Barbara Marx Hubbard book, and they had nothing, no books, nothing. So I was like, wow, Barnes and Noble sucks, So I left without a book. And Sunday, so it's day for hang out with Steve, my good friend Steve. And I show up at his house, and what do you know? There's just a Barbara Marx Hubbard book on the desk. And it's like, not even surprised. It's like, can I borrow this? Yeah, cool. Barbara wants to say something, but it's just part of it. It's like, I fully appreciate this, all of this, and all of that unfolds. Every moment has been preordained as the perfection awaiting for us. And the more that we accept it and allow it to be, the more we see it as such. So we got a boogie here. Go ahead,
We
Karen.
do. Marielle, did you have something that you wanted to bring in? See, you went off mute.
Yes. Well, when you said, Tim, that we're not chosen, we choose. Yeah, I wanted to say, like, if we choose to have a regular practice, automatically almost we have experiences. So that's all and also concerning talking about the experiences, I don't know, I seem to listen, like I've listened to the oneness event of humanity, and I listened to a lot of spiritual teachers speak, and recently I heard a lot about their experiences, like Michael Beckwith talked when he was interviewed. I think it's by Poneman. What's anyway? He talked about all his path. You know, when he started meditating, and when he got some downloads, and afterwards it came like it was in him, sort of. It was not separate from him. The guidance was from himself. You know, it's sort of so. I don't know. I seem to hear that as almost as if we're as pretty common. It's not common, but I don't know. In my life, it's becoming more frequent. So
It is, Marielle. You're right. You're right. This is a recent development where we've heard for many years about channelers, channeling, and bringing forth the higher self. And Michael, and thank you for watching Michael Beckwith's panel. And I would recommend this one for anybody. And it's with Panache Desai too, because they talk about this whole concept of we're not here to be ascended masters. We're here to be descended masters. And Panache says, I can find my divinity in my humanity. So it's not trying to like shed the bodysuit. It's seeing the divinity in it and seeing that, as Michael says, he once considered it channeling, how he would be on stage and channel a message. But as Marielle says, he's no longer, it's just a part of himself that wants to come out. Because what's the difference? If we're channeling from a source, then we're separate from the source. And this is exactly what A Course in Miracles is showing us and training us through this language of split mind. So anyway.
It's supporting us to step into what we are. You know, it's a constant, and because of, I feel, the pulling out, and this book is complicated for the average, you know, to get it. I know the message is the same and simple in one way, but yeah. But the truth is, it's just supporting one another to remember, to realize.
Really.
Yeah. You got to hear it again and again and again. It's okay.
The power of practice and devoted study, because it's just sometimes takes the one way of reading it to make it really click. But it's kind of like, all right, I'm.
And I just want to add something that is a bit unrelated. I I love looking at Steve when he's interviewing Barbara, because he has a sort of face that is like he's in awe, or he's I for me it's a real treat to watch his face.
Agreed, Marielle. You should watch his face in the conscious leadership course when he watches his own modules playing. He has the same face. He's equally at awe with his teaching. Whoa, where did that come from? I'll tell him the appreciation, Mario. I like that. Let's continue here. We still have a lot to read. Okay, so where are we? So if your perfection is in this, and only in this, how can you know it without recognizing this? The recognition of God is the recognition of yourself. Of course, it makes a bit more sense, actually, if we replace him with this. There's no separation of God and this creation. You will realize this when you understand that there is no separation between your will and mine. Let the love of God shine upon you by your acceptance of me. My reality is yours and his. My reality is yours and this. By joining your mind with mine, you are signifying your awareness that the will of God is one. God's oneness and ours are not separate because this oneness encompasses ours. To join with me is to restore this power to you because we are sharing it. Just to note, this is a capital T this. I offer you only the recognition of this power in you, but in this lies all truth. As we unite with this. Glory be to the union of God and this holy Son. These holy sons, these holy creations, these holy daughters, these holy rocks, these holy trees, these holy thoughts, this holy experience. All glory lies in this because this is united, all of it. The miracles we do bear witness to the will of the Father, Mother, God, Creator, Void, for this creation and to our joy in uniting with this will for us. When you unite with me, and again, when A Course in Miracles presents the first person, it is the Christ identity. We could think of as our universal self, our full self, our whole self. It's not quite a higher self because it's not any separate from ourself. It's a self to be chosen that is no separate from all that we see and think and experience. So this is me. So I might as well even replace me with this. It's the same. When you unite with this, you are uniting without the ego because this has renounced the ego in itself, or I have renounced the ego in myself, and therefore cannot unite with your ego. Our union is therefore the way to renounce the ego in you. The final renunciation. Only one thing to renounce is renouncement itself. Even the ego, if we can see what it is and just rather than try and put the idea of ego outside of ourself and just accept it. Not to trust in it or believe in it, but to see, oh, it's a silly thing. And it's not separate from myself. The final renunciation. So the truth in both of us is beyond the ego. The truth in all of this is beyond the ego. Our success in transcending the ego is guaranteed by God. The stamp of God, guaranteed. And I share this confidence for both of us and all of us. I bring God's peace back to all these children because I received it of this for us all. Nothing can prevail against our united wills because nothing can prevail against God. And this is just a fact. This is not a statement of power struggle. It's just a fact. Nothing can prevail against God's will. Of course not. If we're defining God properly so as everything that is and everything that isn't, everything that can be and ever was, all of totality, how can something be that's outside all of totality? It doesn't make sense. So by definition, nothing can prevail against God's will. If it is here, it is God's will. Our interpretation of it may be silly. Our judgment of it may make it unknown. But if it's here, it's God's will. So would you know the will of God for you? Ask it of me who knows it for you, and you will find it. Seek and you will find. I will deny you nothing, just as God denies me nothing. So this statement can be taken two ways, which I find interesting. I will deny you nothing. This can be taken as I will never deny you anything. It can also be taken as I will deny you nothing. Actively, I deny you nothing. you will not experience nothing. Impossible. God denies us nothing actively. It's one and the same thing, but two different ways of thinking about it. Ours is simply the journey back to God, who is our home. God is our home. Here we are. Whenever fear intrudes anywhere along the road to peace, it is because the ego has attempted to join the journey with us and cannot do so. Sensing defeat and angered by it, the ego regards itself as rejected and becomes retaliative. You are invulnerable to its retaliation because I am with you. On this journey, you have chosen me as your companion instead of the ego. Do not attempt to hold on to both, or you will go in different directions and will lose the way. So just a quick clarity on this. Ego is limit. Christ is unlimit, no limit. So this is not like you can have an apple and an orange. It's everything or nothing. There, you can't have both. And the everything that includes even the absence of everything is the everything, and then there's nothing. And you can choose one of the two. You can choose unlimited or limited. You can't be limited and unlimited. Can have somewhat limit. So this is what it means. We don't try to hold on to both because it's just a split mind, thinking of this and then flopping over here, with no momentum, but a lot of effort. The ego's way is not mine, but it is also not yours. The Holy Spirit has one direction for all minds, and the one he taught me is yours. Well, Karen, what would you say is this direction? The Holy Spirit has one direction for all minds, and the one he taught me is yours.
It's just love. It's just peace. It's gladness. It's joy. It's one direction. That's all there is.
I like
Yes.
that. It's good, orderly direction for God.
Yes. Perfectly orderly. Perfectly. Exactly perfectly orderly for what? For our own experience of our own fullest glory, fullest potential, greatest experience. That's what this is. We're not making sacrifices. It's not like this is the garden, and so I have to make a sacrifice in order to experience it. No, this is the garden with all the fruit that I ever wanted. Exactly the right amount, in full abundance, and always growing more.
And we don't, and there isn't anything we have to do in order to be allowed into the garden. All we have to do is say, oh, this is the garden. Here it is. Here I am.
This is the garden. This is the garden.
This is the
Stop
garden.
there for a moment. This is the garden. This is the garden. This is the garden. Don't let anybody convince you otherwise, because all that really means is that we've convinced ourselves otherwise, and we're projecting it on somebody else. I thought this was the garden, and so I found out about that. But what about that horrible thing? This can't be the garden. And so we convince ourselves that this is not.
Oh my goodness, it can't be the garden if that person gets elected. Oh wait, no, it can't be the garden if that other person gets elected. Oh no, where's the garden? What's going to happen? No, we don't have to expend the effort in that way at all. This is the garden.
I think I was in the Mount Charleston. Let me just say, Las Vegas is right next to this, is a desert. It's just dry, okay? And then there's Mount Charleston, which is right near it. And there's a waterfall, Mount Charleston, and there's no lake. It just comes from the top. They say it pulls the water from the clouds. I don't know. It sounds like it's coming from the heavens to me. And so this beautiful place, and then the things are everything is just growing. This is right, like in the middle of the desert, there's a mountain with a waterfall and all this growth. And, you know, walking through it, you get the sense, we get the sense that it's like, oh, it just grows. The plants just grow and the warmth just comes from the heavens, and even the waters just come from the heavens, and it just grows, and we could cut it all down and it would just grow. It would keep growing because that's what it does. Life just grows, and the tree just has its limb like this. And if somebody comes and says, I need to use that, the tree says, I'm not going to stop you. Just cut it off. You know, I'll grow something else. and so it's like, you know, in this complex language, complex English, it's like we really fall for it sometimes. I understand, you know, it's falling for it, where it's like, in order for this to be paradise, we need to elect this person president. And the trees are like, we're just gonna grow. We're just gonna grow because the warmth is coming down from the heavens, and the waters are just showering down from the heavens, and we're just gonna grow out of the earth. And this is what it is. We don't need to elect a president for the trees to grow. They just do, and they will, because they will.
You know, if we collectively can express love, and then, as you said, Terrell, magnify, that will be magnified, right? Then anyone who's elected president can potentially express, extend, magnify more love. It's a possibility. But
Sure.
It begins here. What are we going to do? What choice are we going to make?
Absolutely. So let's finish this up here. So the Holy Spirit has one direction for all minds. This direction is love. And the one he taught me, the one Spirit taught me, is yours. Of course, A Course in Miracles has its own way of defining spirit, but let's just call it spirit for now. Let us not lose sight of Spirit's direction through illusions, for only illusions of another direction can obscure the one for which God's voice speaks in all of us. Love is the direction, whether it's left or right, in or out. The illusion of another direction, something that is better than love, you know, it's the same thing. It can obscure the one for which God's voice speaks in all of us, but it speaks always. Never accord the ego the power to interfere with the journey. It has none, because the journey is the way to what is true. Hold on, there's a quote on here, on the wall. Gandhi says, the truth can never be wrong, even if no one hears it. So, ego has no power, because the journey is the way to what is true. And what is true, even if no one hears it. Leave all illusions behind and reach beyond all attempts of the ego to hold you back. Now, these are prepositional, you know, and directional, temporal concepts. Leave the ego behind. It's holding you back. It's a tool of thought. To really understand this, we're not leaving the ego somewhere outside of ourselves. It's a tool to give up the need to be right. That's all the ego is the need to be right and to be special. So this belief, we can think of it as leaving it aside. It's the first step. But true healing is recognizing that this belief is not outside of myself. So I don't even have to judge it as bad. I just know what I'm choosing. All these menu options, I'm choosing chocolate. Why? Because it's my favorite. Because it's love. All these flavors, and there's love. Just choose love. Simple. Don't have to think. So I go before you. Again, I go before you because I am beyond the ego. Reach therefore for my hand because you want to transcend the ego. It's not it's not brainwashing here. Who chooses limitation? Who is sane? We don't. If we can see that the ego is limitation, we want to transcend the limitation. We're made to create. We're made in the image and likeness of God. We're made in the thought and power of God. So this is how we know ourselves. We want to transcend the ego. My strength will never be wanting. And if you choose to share it, you will do so. I give it willingly because I need you as much as you need me. And isn't this a powerful way to end this? Christ self saying, I need you as much as you need me.
It's beautiful.
Power with another. Yes, this is. Yes, this is beautiful. So, boy, I just thank us all for being here. I don't even know who to pick on for a last word. Who's a bold volunteer for a preamble to the last word? I think Kathy.
No, no. Oh, I was thinking somebody else would be. It was making me think, where is Christine and Teresa? I miss them.
Yeah, where are these?
Yeah, because I would be prepared. There's so many, but I'd have to, somebody
I
else
know
would be ready.
Teresa told me she's taking Eckhart Tolle's course, 8-week course
Okay.
called Being the Light.
Mhm.
So
The last word is grace.
Hmm?
Grace.
The last word is grace. This is all about grace.
And I'm happy that you're back, Nancy, because you haven't been here either for a while. So
Yeah, thank
Nice
you. That's why grace is on my mind. And synchronicities of grace.
Yes, this is. So, Marianne, thank you for joining. And Karen, thank you for joining. And Marielle, thank you for joining. And
How many?
Shabana, thank you for joining.
How many
And
was
Nancy,
there
thank you for
tonight?
joining. We have a 4x4. And Terrell, thank you. I think it's Terrell and maybe not, or Terrell. Terrell, thank you for joining.
It's Terrell, and you can email me and I'd like to talk to you further on these things, Tim. Terrell.sanders@hotmail.com.
Will do. Thank you, Terrell. Thank you, Kathy, for joining, for sharing. Carla, thank you for joining. Barbara, thank you for joining. I think we have 2 Barbara here. So thank you. I think that means 2. So thank you for joining. Diane from France, thank you for joining. And Valerie, thank you for joining with this hat. And Judith, of course, thank you for joining with all the flocks and the herds. And of course, Nikki and Manuela representing the visible name in this room. So thank you. So Karen has something for us to say before we sign off.
Oh, do I? I just love thinking about gladness. And I feel like if we all could just focus our attention on that which makes us feel glad and then share it with the world, it's going to be a happy day. I love you all. Thank you for joining today.
Love you too. God
Life
bless.
is joy, so enjoy.
Namaste.
Amen.
Thank you.
God bless.